On August 1, 2025, the global economic landscape shifted yet again as President Donald Trump's administration imposed a sweeping 25% tariff on Indian exports to the United States. This bold move, framed as an effort to address the long-standing trade imbalance between the two nations, has sent ripples through economies and communities across India. But what does this tariff really mean for Indian households? And how will its effects unfold in the months and years to come? To understand the impact, we first need to look at the scale of the relationship between India and the United States. The United States is one of India's largest trading partners, and Indian exports to America are a crucial lifeline for several industries. From life-saving pharmaceuticals and intricate textiles to dazzling gems and robust engineering goods, Indian products have found eager buyers in the U.S. market for decades. But as of August 1st, every product shipped from Indian shores to the U.S. is now subject to a 25% tariff at the border. This means that for every $1 million worth of goods exported, Indian businesses and ultimately their customers must now pay an extra $250,000 in fees. While the intent is to encourage American manufacturing and reduce the U.S. trade deficit, the immediate effect is to make Indian products more expensive for American buyers, reducing demand, cutting into profits for Indian exporters, and threatening the health of entire sectors back home. One of the hardest hit sectors is pharmaceuticals. India's pharmaceutical industry, dubbed the pharmacy of the world, has long provided affordable medicines to the United States. In fact, pharmaceuticals account for over 30% of India's exports to the U.S. With the new tariff, Indian medicines instantly become more expensive for American distributors and patients, potentially shrinking India's market share and threatening jobs across an industry that employs millions. It's not just pills and syrups. Labor-intensive industries, gems and jewelry, textiles, chemicals, and engineering goods are also feeling the strain. These sectors often operate on thin margins, relying on competitive pricing to keep factories humming and workers employed. With tariffs slashing profits and increasing uncertainty, many businesses are already reevaluating their production schedules and export plans. For Indian households whose livelihoods depend on these industries, the risk of layoffs, reduced hours, or shuttered businesses is now all too real. The consequences ripple far beyond factory floors. As exporters see their earnings decline, they cut back on purchases from their own suppliers, affecting everything from raw materials to transportation and packaging. The result is a domino effect, where the pain of tariffs extends from big cities to small towns, from skilled technicians to daily wage laborers. Even those not directly employed in export sectors may find their futures clouded by the economic slowdown. The macroeconomic picture is equally sobering. According to recent projections, the tariff could reduce India's GDP growth by as much as 40 basis points. At a time when the Indian economy is already grappling with global uncertainties and domestic challenges, this slowdown could mean fewer new jobs, slower wage growth, and a tougher environment for small businesses striving to recover from previous shocks. The financial markets have responded swiftly and nervously. On the morning of August 1st, the Indian rupee opened significantly weaker against the US dollar, trading in the 87.65 to 87.70 range. This depreciation reflects not only immediate concerns about the impact of tariffs, but also the larger trend of foreign investors pulling their money out of Indian equities. In recent weeks alone, over $600 million has flowed out of Indian stocks, a sign of eroding confidence and growing caution among global investors. For ordinary Indian households, the effects of a weaker rupee are tangible and immediate. Imported goods, from fuel and electronics to certain foodstuffs, become more expensive, driving up the cost of living. Inflation, which had been showing signs of moderation, may once again creep higher, eroding the purchasing power of families across the country. For those with loans or obligations denominated in dollars, the burden grows heavier still. But it's not just about economics. The tariff has also triggered a political storm, with opposition leaders in India seizing on the issue to criticize Prime Minister Narendra Modi's government. They argue that the administration should have done more to shield Indian interests and secure more favorable terms in trade negotiations. As the pain of tariffs becomes more widely felt, public pressure on policymakers to find a solution will only intensify. In response, the Indian government is already at work. negotiators are engaged in ongoing talks with their American counterparts, seeking a fair and balanced agreement that could roll back or soften the impact of the tariffs. There is hope that diplomacy, perhaps aided by mutual economic interests and long-standing ties, can yield a compromise. But in the meantime, businesses and families must brace themselves for a period of turbulence. Some households will face the consequences more directly than others. For families with members employed in the export sector, whether in a textile mill in Surat, a pharmaceutical plant in Hyderabad, or a gem-cutting workshop in Jaipur, the risk of job loss or wage cuts is real and immediate. For others, the effects may be less direct, but no less significant. Higher prices at the market, slower job creation, and more competition for scarce opportunities. Community organizations and local governments may find themselves on the front lines, offering support and retraining for displaced workers, or providing relief to those hit hardest by inflation. In some regions, particularly those heavily dependent on exports to the U.S., the social and economic fabric may be tested as unemployment rises and business activity slows. Yet, amid the uncertainty, there may also be opportunities. Some Indian exporters may look to diversify their markets, seeking buyers in Europe, the Middle East, or Southeast Asia. Others may invest in upgrading technology or improving efficiency to remain competitive despite higher costs. For households and communities, adaptation and resilience will be key. Ultimately, the story of the 25% tariff imposed by the United States on Indian exports is one of interconnectedness and shared vulnerability. In a globalized world, decisions made in Washington can shape the destinies of families thousands of miles away. For Indian households, the coming months will bring challenges, but also the chance to demonstrate adaptability, solidarity, and perhaps find new paths forward in an uncertain era. As negotiations continue and the situation evolves, one thing is clear: the effects of this tariff will be felt not just in boardrooms and government offices, but in the day-to-day lives of millions of Indian families. How they weather this storm will depend not only on the actions of policymakers, but on the resilience and ingenuity that have long defined the Indian spirit.